Yo, 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 yo. Okay, can we just do a trial run? I'm going to talk into the mic. You
No,
talk.
Matt, actually, all that was very helpful because it gave me a chance to get
Okay,
the
perfect.
hiccups out.
Okay.
I can freestyle.
Can we just... All right, here we go. So it's
Are we on?
it's February 10th, 2021. It is the 10th, right?
Do you want me to beatbox?
I'm always down to beatbox, personally. But
2021.
we were just trying to get the levels down, and then JB had the hiccups because we had some pizza right before this. And
yeah,
yes,
and then
I
went
just
on
looked.
some sort of tirade about the news and.
Well, it
It's-
is. You
is
came
it-
over and I had Fox News on, and you're like,
It-
what are you watching? Essentially.
Yeah, and then I went.
Sorry, not to make you get back all
we
into it.
lost like a really good golden nugget of my
Yeah.
commentary. Who cares? Let's start over, Matt. Once again, I come over, and it's the usual business of, hey, dude, let's catch up on the last week, and here's my thoughts, and let's hear your thoughts. And I kind of feel like the new format, Matt, is like as soon as I get here, we just need to get into this room and get the earmuffs on and just talk,
I
because
think that would
we
be a good
lost
idea.
a good podcast out
Yeah.
there talking about pizza and TV and
In the last few
yeah.
weeks, honestly.
Well, it's fine. So we're learning, we're growing.
Yeah, I've never done this podcast thing before, so.
Well, we're gonna get better and better each time we do it. I do believe we're gonna sharpen each other. We're gonna become sharp here, Matt.
Like a knife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a proverb in the Bible that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So it's kind of like
That makes sense.
It's taking like two pieces of iron and going like this, whoosh, 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 and then they both get sharp. So, anyways, that's what we do here, everybody. We sharpen each other.
Yeah, so you walked in. I was cooking pizza, throwing together a salad.
Yeah, he made it from scratch.
And I, honestly, I just like to have some background noise on, so I just threw the TV on.
Why, Matt? Why can't you have silence?
I don't know. I mean, I have my fan on in my bathroom most of the time that I go to sleep at night. I just like having that kind of. I just like having that noise.
This might be
that white noise.
Yeah, but this might be a conversation for our age. Why do we need to have that?
I think I've always had it for
science?
Well, there's nothing wrong with science. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of people can relate, though. They just kind of have to have that white noise going on in the background.
Is it so that we block out our internal thoughts?
I have no idea. I don't know. But anyway, I had Fox News on. I did not.
That's much better than your internal thoughts.
I did not change it to Fox News. I just turned the TV on, and it was on Fox News. And then you came over, and then you were commenting.
Did you turn it on, or did it turn itself on?
No, I turned the TV on. Yes.
I'm just teasing you.
I know.
It's kind of like a poltergeist thing. It turns itself on, and there's Fox News. Or CNN. It could be either one.
Well, yeah. MSNBC, ABC, whatever.
And they're talking
all
to you, and they are important, and you need to listen.
Well,
hi, I'm Joe Schmo, and I'm in a studio in New York, and I know things, and you need to listen to what I'm about to tell you, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, not enough people question that fact. Not enough people question who am I listening to? They just see a guy behind a fancy desk wearing a suit, and they just tend to believe it.
Yeah.
Because no one's ever told them not to.
And they fall into that hypnotic trance, and then they just start taking in all the, I started before, I don't know what happened before, but let me just, here are my points. I walk in, I see a screen. It's a split screen. On one part of the screen is a person, and they're saying shit, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a banner above them that kind of with a headline. And then on the other side of the screen is something else happening. And the first thing I saw was Donald Trump at a podium, and he's got his arms open, and I'm confused because I'm like, well, why is the one person on one half of the screen talking about Donald Trump? I don't understand. I don't understand what's happening. And then there's a banner over, with the headline. And then beneath it is this running script. And it's kind of related, and it's not related, and it's all sorts of other like little, it's like this telegram, kind of like in Times Square in New York. It's just this stream of information, and it's so overwhelming to me that I don't even understand what I'm looking at. But then the thing that's even weirder is that people watch this constantly. And I don't know if they actually stop and objectively question it ever.
No, but it's because, well, this is just my opinion, obviously, but it's because they've never been told to question it.
Well, see, here's the beauty of it, Matt, is you don't have to put a disclaimer like this is just my opinion. This is your podcast, dude. This is all about your opinion.
For sure, but I want to lay out, I want to try to look at things as factually as I can. And, ultimately I want the truth. And, it's a bold statement. What is the truth? But that's
well,
ultimately my goal.
Touche. I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, either last time or the time before when we were talking about objective truth. How important is the truth right now? Do people care? Can we agree on what the truth is? Because if we can't, how can we make any progress? How can we go forward? Or are we just going to be kind of splintered off into 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000 different directions? If we can't have a central, a green common ground, common place, common point, how can we move forward? Can we?
No, you can't. You can't when this is how I look at it. The mainstream media, you have the right and the left, and you have the right and left media, mainstream media. It's like a football team or a baseball team. Everyone's rooting for their team.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to come to an understanding where people can kind of say, okay, I agree. I can see where you're coming from. There's no understanding. People just want to root for their team.
Yeah.
And there's no tolerance. There's absolutely no tolerance from what I've seen talking to people on YouTube or social media or having conversations with people in the comment section. People automatically will say, you're part of a cult, you're crazy, you're nuts, without knowing anything about me. They just jump to that conclusion.
Why do you think they do that?
I think it's because the culture has told us, the mainstream media has told us, the news has told us, the TV has told us, Hollywood has told us what is right and what is wrong. And people have no tolerance to listen to others and to have just a civil conversation and trying to understand each other. It's just about I'm right or you're wrong, or you're wrong or I'm right. And if you don't agree with me, you're nuts, you're crazy, you're a Nazi, you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're a xenophobe. And it's just division. It's all about division. Everyone is being divided, but nobody really realizes it.
How did we get here, Matt?
I think we got here because the mainstream medias are part of it is it's a production company. It's a business, and they need to make money, and they need to have stories, and they need to intrigue you, and they need to piss you off, and they need to make you happy, and they need to make you sad. And they will take things that's going on within politics or geopolitics, like global politics, and they will spin it in a certain way, and most mainstream media outlets are either right wing or left wing. So people will identify with that. And if you're conservative, you're going to be watching Fox News or OAN, One America News Network, or if you're a liberal, you're going to be watching, well, most of the mainstream media outlets are liberal, but MSNBC or CNN or ABC. And they have to make money. They have to have a story. They have to pull you in. So they also have an agenda, I feel. They're pushing a certain narrative, and they have propaganda that they want to shove down your throat because they have handlers. They have people that pay them money in order to spew a certain narrative, if you will. And I think that's how we got here. It's because most people, I hate to say most people, but a lot of people within the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years have just watched the mainstream news. They get home from work, they feed their kids, they sit down in front of the TV and they watch the news, and it tells them what's going on. They're catching up on what's going on around the planet, what's going on within their country, what's going on within their state or their county. And people have just become numb. They don't ask questions. They don't try to understand anything. They just kind of consume what's fed to them.
Do you think that, though, most people probably look at it as it's their civic duty to be informed, and so they kind of turn on the news and they're, well, I better, it's the responsible thing for me to do is to know what's going on. And do you think that might be their attitude?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people want to be a part of society. People want to be a part of their community. People want to relate to their neighbors. So of course people want to be engaged. But is the information that they are being fed legitimate? And I think that's the major question. I think people don't question what they're being fed enough in order to decipher what's real and what's fake, or what's being skewed, or what's being taken out of context.
Well, let me pitch something to you and just think about it for a minute. Let's say I'm Joe Schmo, and I get up in the morning at whatever time, 6 in the morning, and I have a family, and I have a 9-to-5 job, and I get up, and maybe I have time to see my kid or children before they go off to wherever, and I have a chance to see my wife or whatever briefly in the morning, but maybe I do, maybe I don't. And if I do, it's very brief because it's kind of like this whole scramble of getting ready to go to work,
Sure,
the rat race, or to, our daily routine as a family and whatever. And then I get on the road and I sit in traffic, and it may be a long commute, it may not. And then I do my job, and I may like it or I may not. And I then get back in my car and I drive home in traffic might be a long commute, might not be. And then by the time I get home, what do you think the general mental state is? If that's most people, what do you think their general mental state is?
You're tired, you're drained. You're hungry. You want to say hi to your family, your kids, your husband, your wife.
So you're not at your sharpest. This is my point.
Most likely not, yes.
You're not at your sharpest, and this is the strategic time when the news is on. So now the news comes across the airwaves where I'm not necessarily mentally on guard. And what is the message of the news generally? Is it positive?
No, it's generally negative.
And so it's depressing. Or it's fearful.
Lots of fear. Yeah.
It gives me a sense of that I'm not in control. Gives me a sense of insecurity. Makes me feel like maybe the world is this big bad scary place where I'm powerless.
Yeah, it can make you feel real small,
Yeah.
which I think
So
is probably part
if
of
you're
the
my
agenda.
enemy, if this is a means of warfare against me to make me feel inferior to you, to intimidate me, to confuse me, to demoralize me. Wouldn't this be an opportune time to do something like that when my defenses are down?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any accident that they have the news on when it's on.
Yeah. So the news is really just one component of, what you and I were talking about at dinner time with the New World Order. And the New World Order to me is like the best description of what I see, what I've been looking at. It's a new, think about these words for a minute. We talked about this briefly at dinner, Matt. It's a new world order. It's not the order that we knew growing up.
No.
Or that's been functioning for however long, some time. And before we can have a new world order, the old world order has to kind of be put to rest and be put in the ground and buried and never be dug up again. It's a done thing. So getting people to transition from the old way of doing things into the new way of doing things, there's going to be a transitional time for that to happen. Are you following me?
Absolutely.
But I actually think that they've been preparing us for decades.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
So first they kind of put the thought in our brain. And it's that way it's not so traumatic to us as a species to make this sort of change, to make this sort of reset like they've been talking about lately.
The Great Reset.
Right. But what we've been doing, we've actually been going in stages towards this Great Reset. And the faster that they've been able to upload and renew our perception of things, it's like they had to do it in stages. And then they got us to the point where we had a TV in our pocket at all times. Our phones. First it was just the television, and then it was like this physical thing that you had to physically sit in front of. Now it's like everybody is like constantly on this thing, and it's in their it's portable, and there's the whole phenomenon of social media, which is social mania, really.
I've never heard that. That's good. Social mania.
Well, you can quote me on that. Because you were going on a rant before about, if somebody introduces a line of thinking that's outside of the group think, they are ostracized and they're criticized and they're persecuted, and they're called all sorts of like names, marginalized as you're a this, you're a that, you're a Nazi, which is a terrible thing to say to somebody if they don't have, if it's not true, if
Right.
it's not substantiated,
It's so over the top and
basically
ridiculous.
You disagree, you're the bad guy, and it's and that's why I bring us back to that question: how did we get here? How the fuck did what happened?
Yeah, mind control. I mean, essentially.
That's the ace in the hole, really. If you can control somebody's mind, they're your slave.
Yeah. Yeah, it's big business, this mainstream media.
Well, it's not just business; it's an interesting science.
Sure, it's
'Cause
it's
it's not about
psychological warfare.
right. It's not just about making money; it's about engineering the future.
How to make people do what you want them to do. So there's not enough standing armies on the planet to control everyone. So how do you do it? You do it by manipulating people's minds.
Oh yes, and then you don't. Then you're almost like God.
Sure, sure. I've never
Well,
thought of it that
only
way,
God
but
doesn't manipulate people's minds.
no.
God doesn't force you to do things. God just basically lays out the rules and say, well, if you do this, you're going to get that. If you do this, you're going to reap what you sow.
Well, especially with when I think the intent of the media is to cause chaos and division, then of course God, I don't think God would do that. I don't know what God is, but if there is a God, I don't think that he or she or it would do that. But
Well,
the
yeah,
mainstream,
that's another subject altogether.
sure.
What we're talking about is manipulating people's thinking to produce a certain kind of outcome. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been done through every aspect of society, through universities and our colleges and our education system. Like who funds it and where, there was a quote, I don't know who said it, but whoever wins the wars writes the history, right? So if Hitler won World War II, wouldn't the history books be different?
Oh, definitely. 100% on the
So
money.
can we really believe what we're being told when it comes from your mainstream media source, like on your news channel when you get home from work that you're watching, or if your son or daughter or yourself is in a college class being taught history? I mean, how do you know what's real and what's not?
That's a great question.
How do you know what's being pumped down your throat?
Well, can we agree that there is something happening to us? There is a reality that we're all experiencing. Can we agree upon that?
Yeah, we're all experiencing the same reality, but at the same time we're not. We're all seeing the movie through our own eyes. We're all living our own movie.
Yeah, so that's a genius point. So if you are interpreting reality slightly different than I am, or maybe even vastly different than I am, but you're not causing me or anybody else any harm, should I care?
You don't have to. You have free will. You can care. You don't have to care. But me personally, yeah, I would care because I want to understand reality. I want to understand what's going on. And yeah, I'm always trying to look at other people's perspectives and other people's views. And I don't want to just listen to this person or that person. I want to listen to everyone. And then that way I can make an informed decision or try to understand at least what's going on, if you will. That doesn't always mean that I know what's going on, but I try and I make an effort. And I'm not out to attack people if they have different views than me. And I feel that is one of the main problems that we have right now, is that there's no tolerance. It's, if you disagree with me, you're a Nazi. If you disagree with me, you're homophobe. If you disagree with me, you're a xenophobe. It's just a way of shutting people down, and it doesn't allow for any kind of like critical thinking, logical thinking, or just like being open-minded and having a conversation with someone.
What do you think those people are thinking?
I think those
The
people have been
that are calling
indoctrinated.
you Nazi, or the people that are throwing away, throwing those sorts of labels on people. What do you think their thought process is?
I think that they think that they're in the right, and that they think they're just. And I think a lot of I see a lot of these young college students within their, like late teens to early 20s in universities, and they're taking these certain humanities classes, and they feel that what they are saying is just, but is what they are being taught just? Is what they are being taught propaganda? Is there truth to it? Is there some truth? Is it just falsehoods? What is it? And a lot of people, a lot of these young kids, in my opinion, want to feel like they're a part of some movement.
Oh yeah.
Where, like in the 60s with, people standing up and people marching with Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and like, being against racism. Yeah, anti-Vietnam or whatever it is.
Yeah.
These young people within this generation, they want to have that, and they want to be part of a movement and to have themselves on this pedestal. But I think they're just being used as pawns.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is that passion, that noble pursuit of being part of a cause, is that being manipulated? Are they being exploited? Is that being kind of hijacked
110%
for a different kind of political purpose? So you would say 100%
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
these people are
It's sad.
Unfortunately being pardon the phrase, but they're the useful idiots of the day.
Yeah.
Is that
or
what you're
they're
saying?
the sheep. It's like herding sheep. It's psychological warfare. You know how to pull the heartstrings of someone. You know how to manipulate. These people are being manipulated to think that they are doing the right thing, when in fact they are only being used as pawns to push an agenda. And
they're adding gravity to the political force. Is that what you're saying?
sure, yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I tend to agree with you. So the youth, their ambition, their drive, their desire, their passion in itself is not a bad thing. It's just that it's being directed, it's being used as fuel.
Sure, yeah.
Towards an end that they don't quite totally comprehend.
I feel that most people really are coming from a place of like love and caring, and they want to do the right thing.
Yeah, goodwill.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree.
But they're just being used, and it's so frustrating to see it.
I agree.
It's so frustrating to see people being manipulated and used, because those in power that are doing this and pulling the strings, they don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about humanity. They don't care about these college kids. They're using them to push an agenda. And it's so manipulative.
So, Matt, what's the solution? What's the antithesis to this problem?
Education.
Okay.
Doing what we're doing right now, having a conversation, breaking it down, understanding what's going on, putting it in simple terms, trying to get through to people. I'm not saying that I have all the answers. I always say the only thing I know for sure is how much I don't know. So I'm never trying to come with ego. But I've done enough research to realize that people are being taken advantage of, and I want to share info in order to plant a seed. And if I plant that seed, then maybe that person will start to look into things for themselves out of their own curiosity. And maybe then they will see that, hey, maybe I'm not being told the truth. Maybe I am being taken advantage of. maybe I should think in a different way or a different perspective.
Right on. So I hear you. As we're talking, I think that you and I have kind of laid the groundwork for this general problem. So let's talk now about current events, and let's talk also about historical context. Let's because it seems like the recurring theme is there's deception out there.
Yeah.
And it seems like the deception is being employed by a certain elite group, and that certain elite group is using everyday people to bring about their agenda. I feel like we've established those points in our previous recordings. So let's talk about kind of the specifics of what's going on in our modern age now, and who the players are, and what they're doing specifically. We could talk about, the whole COVID thing. We could talk about the vaccines. We could talk about the social justice stuff. We could talk about the politics of the left and right, back and forth. We talk about how it's actually played out. But, let's shed light on it.
Sure.
Let's see what we can find out. And maybe we won't figure everything out perfectly. We're not going to. But if we can make progress, I think that'll be a good thing. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a big subject. But I'm ready to delve in.
It's crazy because, we've talked for a long time. We've talked for years.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like when I talk, I might go back to something that happened 15 years ago. I might connect it to something that's happening right now. I'd be like, oh, it's just like what happened 15 years ago when whatever. Some event. But it's the same people doing it. It's the same people moving towards the new world order. And it's crazy because what trips me out, Matt, is I've actually been looking for these people to actually manifest this thing for a long time. And then it seems like in 2020 they really went all in.
Oh yeah. All in.
And I was like, I kind of couldn't believe it. It's like I knew it was going to happen, but it's like when I actually watched it happen, and I saw that it's not that I didn't see them doing other things up until that point, but when I saw them do the whole COVID thing, I was like, oh my God, this is the first time they've got the whole world under their thumb.
Yeah.
They actually pulled the trigger on it, and that just tripped me out like so much. I'm like, wow, they actually showed what they're capable of doing and what they're willing to do, and on a global level, and how coordinated they were with the whole thing.
Very coordinated, which is hard for people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, and of course they blame it on an invisible virus.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, really, it's like we've looked at this thing for almost a year now, and we've been like, it was all psychological mostly. Not to say that there wasn't a virus or anything like that, but to say that it was worth doing all of these measures for is not. It doesn't merit it.
No, absolutely
if you're
not.
thinking, if you're looking at these things objectively, math and etc.
Yeah.
It's like this was just a test run for what they really want to do.
Well, they could put out a very deadly virus.
They
and
have the capability of doing all of these things.
This isn't really a pandemic.
No.
I mean, people could be dying in the streets, but
they have in my opinion, in my research, they have the capability of doing something astronomically more deadly than this. They just wanted to kind of turn the machine on and see, like, what would happen if they did like a bubblegum test, on it. That's what this is. COVID-19 is a bubblegum test. This is not the real deal. But they could unleash something. They just want to make sure, like, okay, let's do a drill. Let's make sure if we shut everything down that this works, blah blah blah, da da da. Okay, it looks like it could work. Now let's do the real thing on them. You know what I mean? It's like we're set up completely for a really bad thing now. What do you think?
I agree. Yeah. It was essentially a trial run. But these things like COVID, they have way more than just one agenda. There's multiple agendas within them.
Talk about that.
Well, I think a huge part of COVID being released was to try to have mail-in ballots to try to manipulate the election. People aren't going to want to go to their voting stations, especially if you're like an older person. The mainstream media is really like pushed against older people being very susceptible to COVID. It was a way to steal the election. And I think they've had this plan. When I say they, like the globalists, the people pulling the strings.
Yeah, when you say they, because you and I might slightly disagree or mostly agree who they are. Who are they? I can agree with you on the term globalist.
Yeah, I think it's the central bankers are like the very like head of the snake,
They're
the head of the beast, if you
I
will.
don't think that they're the only people.
No, but there's these aristocracies, these families, and
also another component, but
they're all interconnected, and it's all sorts of different countries and leadership within different countries that are trying to pull the strings in order to push ahead the agenda of a new global system. And you had Donald Trump come in, and he was all about sovereignty and closing the borders and bringing jobs back to America, and having the lowest unemployment rate, and prison reform. And that's not what they want. They want to open up the borders. They don't want to have sovereignty. They want a global system, a global government of control. However you want to call it. You could call it the New World Order or a global government or whatever you want. It's a system of global control that is the strings are being pulled by many different factions that we can get into. But I think it's most important to highlight the fact that there is a network of criminal and global corruption that is pulling strings. Because I think a lot of people don't believe that, and they think it sounds ridiculous, and they just want to say, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. That can't be real.
Why do you think people dismiss that so easily?
Probably because people just are used to watching the mainstream media, and you're never going to get you're never going to hear anything about that on the mainstream media.
It's not just watching it, it's watching him believing it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's one thing to watch it, it's
right.
another thing to believe it. Where are we going after that, Matt?
There needs to be an awareness of what's going on the planet. People need to be aware of who's pulling the strings and how our economy works, and how our economic system works, how our medical system works. We need to be aware of the legal system, where it comes from. Because if we don't have an understanding of the past, then we're not going to understand what's going on presently or in the future. We're not going to understand what's going on currently.
Where do you think we are right now as a human species?
Well, this
Are
is a
we safe?
huge.
Are we in trouble? What is your diagnosis?
This is just my opinion from the research that I've done, and this is a huge thing to say, but I honestly think we're on World War III right now. But it is a hybrid war. It is not a conventional war of dropping bombs and people shooting at each other. It's based on technology, and it's based on controlling the narrative. It's based on controlling information, which you can see people are being kicked off of Twitter. People are being censored on Facebook. People are being censored on every mainstream media, or I'm sorry, every social media platform that you can imagine. What you had, I think it wasn't Gab that was taken down, but was it Parler? I think it was Parler that was taken down recently, and the app stores didn't want to.
What happened to Parler?
I
What's the
haven't
latest
really
with them?
kept up on it, honestly. I'm not sure. I don't
It
know if
seems
it's
like
back
that's kind
up.
of gone on the back burner.
Yeah,
I haven't heard much about them recently.
when the news doesn't keep talking about it, people tend to forget about stuff, which is another another form of manipulation and propaganda,
I
I
agree.
feel. Like, oh, if you just stop talking about it, people just kind of become numb to it and forget about it. But anyway, my point is there's so much censorship. So that is World War III. That you have good guys and bad guys, and I hate to put it in such simple, basic black and white terms, but I will just for the sake of simplicity at the moment. But you have good guys and bad guys fighting for the narrative, basically. They're fighting. It's an information warfare. It's like 1984, which I feel everybody should read. Or I've seen the movie. I'm sure.
No,
The
don't
movie's
watch
not
the
as
movie,
good
read
as
the
the
book.
book. But yeah, it's an information warfare, and that's why I was so compelled to want to do a podcast and be able to have a conversation, be able to share information instead of just going on social media or Facebook or Twitter and getting into like arguments with people, because I've done that and I'm not trying to be rude. I don't swear. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to start an argument. I just simply want to have a conversation, and that was the main reason that I wanted to do this podcast. So I could talk to somebody that's like-minded, or even somebody that's not like-minded, just somebody to like throw ideas at and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Makes sense to me, Matt. Why do you think that people have such a hard time having this kind of conversation?
I think people have a hard time having this conversation because people have an idea or a perception of how reality is in their head. And when you question that reality or challenge them with ideas that question their reality, then it becomes scary because now you have to go back and you have to rethink everything that you know up until this current point.
Right, people get threatened and that makes them feel uneasy.
Absolutely. And when people allow their egos to get in the way, and we all have one, it's part of being human. But when your ego gets in the way, your ego says, no, 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 I have this all figured out. Give me a break. This guy or that girl is crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. And they allow their ego to take charge. And then it's just like a block. It's a block. It doesn't allow new information in order to be processed, in order to maybe think about things in a different way or a different light.
So let's just pretend for a minute. I kind of had a thought. Hopefully I can articulate it well. Let's pretend that the people who are manipulating reality through the media and through social media and all that, let's pretend that they start to lose.
which
And
I think they are.
okay, let's pretend that they lose miserably. What does the world start to look like going forward? What do you think it would look like?
I think that if those in charge start to lose the propaganda war, then it will start opening people's minds to look at things in a different way. We will start questioning things. It will lead to more freedom. It will expose those within our federal government and not only in our federal government, but people around the world in positions of power that are corrupt. It will allow people to start questioning why those people are in power. Are what they are doing, is it good? Is it bad? Is it just? Is it for the benefit of the people? Or are they working against us? It's going to start an awakening, a great awakening where the world can be a better place because now people aren't going to allow themselves to be manipulated. They're going to see through the lies. They're going to see through the bullshit. They're going to see through the propaganda. They're not going to trust the mainstream media when they come home at night and they turn on the television. I think it's extremely beneficial. And that's what needs to happen on this planet. Because if we keep going in the way that we're going, we're going to be in complete slavery. And we've been heading there for maybe thousands of years. So
So
it's time. It's time to wake up.
so the description that you gave, would that then be a new world order?
I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but I think it's a shift in consciousness. And it's to shift in consciousness in order for people to wake up and see things in a new perspective, in a new light, in order to allow themselves to be free of the slavery that we've been,
My point, again, playing devil's advocate, but isn't new world order a shift depending on whose new world order you want it to be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why it's important to understand the players in the game. It's like a chessboard. You have to know what pieces are on what side. Who is your enemy? You have to understand who your enemy is. Who are you fighting? And how are they manipulating you? What is their game plan? You have to know the game plan. You have to have an idea of it. So if we understand that a huge part of the game plan is the mainstream media, then that's a huge piece that we can take away from them that they won't be able to use against us. But I think it's happening. Maybe slowly, maybe not as fast as I want or I would hope for, but I think people are awakening to the massive amount of corruption that's all around us, that if we don't deal with it now, we're not going to have a planet. We're not going to have freedom of any kind in a very short period if we don't start to stand up and do something about this now.
Matt, in what ways do you see history repeating itself?
I see the same mechanisms to carry out the New World Order, like communism and socialism and Marxism. And I see that within our education system, not only within the United States, but within like the UK and Western society, where in our educational systems, we are pushing Marxism and communism. And you have these young kids that are pushing for communism, thinking that it's about the government treating everyone equally and everyone has equal amounts of food and shelter and it's just, but it's not. It's a vehicle for the globalists in order to manipulate and take control. It's a vehicle for them to implement their New World Order system.
Why do you think people are getting on board with it?
Because that's what they're taught in school. That's what their professors tell you. That's what their textbooks teach you. That's what, authors that they read tell you. It's shoved down their throat. That's what the mainstream media tells you. That's to be a good progressive, to be a good liberal. And by no means am I on the right or left. I think it's all, a paradigm. But I think the globalists are using liberalism as a means for a vehicle in order to push their agenda. And I think that's done very heavily through our education system and our media. And people fall into it. So let's talk about it. Let's bring awareness to it. Let's question it.
What are some of the conclusions that we can take away from tonight, Matt?
To question everything. To question everything that you see on the TV. I don't care if it's on your computer screen or in a newspaper that you get tomorrow morning or in a book that you're reading or an article. Question everything. I don't care if it's a conversation that you have with your husband or your wife or your son or your daughter. Question everything. Look into it. Understand what's going on. Don't believe anything just for the sake of believing it. I think that's important. And that's very broad. Yes, it is. But it can be applied to many factions of your everyday life.
So question everything. And are there any other conclusions that you have for any takeaways?
No, I would just say that I enjoy doing these, and I hope that there's an audience or people listening, and I hope we can open people's minds by having these conversations. And I think it's about keeping up on current events because that's what I do every day. And I think we just keep going. We just keep talking. We just keep sharing ideas, and that will eventually help to open up the minds of people. So current events, essentially, I'm sorry not to get off on a tangent, but I think keeping up on current events and what's going on, and I think that's very important. So hopefully we can keep doing these and just keeping up on what's going on in the world around us.
Touche.
Yeah. Well, February 10th. If you want to round out, I don't know, I think that sums it up. We can come back to it tomorrow, the next day.
Yeah, it'll seem instantaneous to everybody at home, but for us, it'll be like a week or two. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. We love you.
Yeah, absolutely. And always
Keep your thinking caps on.
dare to think.